Hello, everyone. This is me, Rabab Zehra from TECHx Media. Today, as a guest, I have with me Gregg Petersen. He is Regional Director, Middle East and Africa at Cohesity. Today, we will talk with Gregg to better understand that what are those gaps that put businesses and security postures at risk. Gregg will present some facts, some stats in front of us, and we will also ask him a few questions to help our audience better understand it. So let's welcome Gregg on TECHx Media. Hi, Gregg, how are you?
Yes, very good. Thank you, Rabab. Nice to see you, and thank you for having me. Much appreciated.
It's a pleasure to have you here with us. So, Gregg, please tell us and our audience that, as an expert, that what are those gaps that are putting businesses and security postures at risk?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting survey that Cohesity did because the biggest gap at the moment is the collaboration between IT operations and security operations, and what is this effect on cybersecurity, both from a boardroom and a company perspective, as well as from a regional and a business perspective. So very, very interesting survey that was done, and what is this collaboration gap actually causing? And I think, so I said, it's obviously we're getting hit locally, and I think we see this all the time. We see it in the news pretty much every week now, of companies in the UAE and Saudi Arabia being hit. And I think the reason why we did this survey was, first of all, to understand, should IT operations and security operations share this responsibility, the cybersecurity and ransomware challenges? How are they collaborating? And if so, what are the challenges they see around this lack of collaboration, and what is the impact from a security business, and obviously from a talent, from careers, from the skill shortage perspective, and what are the ongoing challenges that this provides in terms of not only global but local talent shortage, and how can Cohesity help this? and really, are cyber threats getting worse, and how many of them have actually recently been hit by it? So it's pretty interesting. So this particular survey that we did was over 2,000 people, pretty much half of them in the US, and then the balance split evenly between the UK, Australia, and New Zealand. And by the way, it was split pretty evenly between IT operations and security operations. And surprise, surprise, not much really surprise in terms of the results, but over 2/3 saying that in the last year, significant increase, and really almost half of them have been affected in the last 6 months. And I personally get to speak to a lot of those people that have been affected all the time, and my phone rings and I speak to these people all the time.
So I will stop you here because I have a question. That you indicated that ransomware and cyber threats are worsening, and given that your company is well known in the industry, there must be a lot of worry. You just said that you talk with those people, to your customers. So what are your customers telling you, especially recently now, about those threats? How worried they are, and what are they doing?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's I tell customers, and customers are telling me, when it's not a case of if we're going to get hit, it's kind of more of a case of when we're going to get hit. And we see that 59% of companies in the UAE this last year have been hit already, whereas when we spoke to them, I think it was back in 2020, only 38% of our companies had been hit. That's the first thing they're saying. The second thing that they're saying is that the cost of impact for UAE companies is over $6.5 million per attack, which is pretty significant, because on a global scale, it's only just over $3.8 million, just under 3.9. So not quite double, but nearly double the global impact, which is scary. And I think the cyber market locally will pretty much double from 2020 to 2025. So we can see that it's the problem's not going away. The cybersecurity market is going to increase at 13% year on year, and so there's a challenge for companies, but an opportunity for cybersecurity specialists and ransomware protection specialists like Cohesity. So
right.
yeah. So more than, and again, no surprise really. So more than 80% believe that this responsibility of cybersecurity and ransomware protection should be shared. Again, probably less of a surprise as well that more IT ops believe that this should be shared and security operations, but still 2/3 of security operations certainly believe that
So,
should
Greg,
be shared.
again, I have a question that when we talk about shared responsibility, could you elaborate on how security operations are responsible for an organization's security and vulnerability management?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's interesting you asked the question like that, because the way that you've asked the question makes you perceive that security operations should be responsible alone, which is certainly not the case. And both security operations and IT operations should share this responsibility, right? So, it's not only about sharing the responsibility, it's about, how to improve this collaboration and what should they do. So first thing is, for example, both sit down and determine what are the RTOs and RPOs that need to be achieved and how would you achieve this. Second of all, more sharing of things like budgets, because budgets at the moment are obviously very separate. So putting these budgets together and collaborating, and not only that, proactively sitting down and going through drills and really working out what happens, not only in the case of when we get hit, but proactively testing in these scenarios. So making sure that they've done the drills, that when they get hit, how quickly can they recover, and together. So the way you ask the question implies that security operations is responsible, but no, these people should be coming together, IT ops and security ops, sharing this responsibility. And they are, by the way, they're collaborating well in the majority of instances. Actually, the survey has been brilliant. Every day I get to speak to companies, and I was one of the largest companies this week locally, and to see both teams in the boardroom together put a smile on my face. I was like, guys, just to say something, you're doing it the right way, right? So I see this in action, but a surprising number, 22% still believe that it can be better. So the collaboration is certainly far from ideal, and I think the bigger the organizations get, maybe you find it's more challenging. And really, the other interesting thing is, what is the impact? Okay, so what happens when you get hit, and what are they scared of in the instance of an attack? So, and there's a whole, obviously, as you'd imagine, including things like business reputation, which you can never really measure. But I mean, 42%, nearly half of them, not only concerned about data loss, but also business disruption. And this is not only a part of the survey, but I was trying to buy some groceries last Saturday, and I couldn't pay. I don't know. So it's we feel this in the street all the time. So what is the revenue impact and business? What is the? I've lost my train of thought. Reputation, sorry, is again immeasurable. So despite this, we asked them, what is the biggest barrier? What's stopping this collaboration? First of all, over 40% cited this integration between, or the lack of integration between the two, and the lack of coordination between the two. So pretty evenly split in terms of what would be the biggest barrier to get back up and running following a successful ransomware attack. And this is another interesting discussion that I have all the time, is because people call me all the time. Oh, we've been hit by ransomware. What are we going to do? And I'm like, okay, so let's talk now, right? Have we got not only IT operations, but security back in the room together, and let's talk. In terms of critical capabilities, and obviously this is dear to Cohesity, is how many of these, both security operations and IT operations, prioritize backup as part of their ability to protect and recover. And I think it's a scarily low number, especially security operations. Only 38% believe that backup should be prioritized. And unsurprisingly, 54% of IT operations, which is your storage and your backup administrators, actually believe backups. And again, I would say that 54% is on the low end, and it should be closer to 100%. In terms of, this capability of backups. And when we talk about the capability of the backups is, are you able to identify these attackers, or proactively identify the attackers? Can you protect from it in the case of the attacks? In terms of detection, and we can go into a lot of that, what about detection proactively, and detection of where's all the data and where have you been hit, and how quickly can you respond to the attacks, and very important is how long will it take you to recover from the attacks. Again, no surprise in terms of what if security and IT operations were actually collaborating better, and do they believe that they would be better prepared for ransomware attacks? And of course, more than 80% actually genuinely believe that if there was better collaboration, then they would be able to respond quicker. So now what, right? So now we've got them collaborating, and how can they improve? Because not only the press are asking us, but the companies are saying, okay, great, it's amazing, thank you, but what should we do? How can we do it better? First of all, sit down together, sit around the table, get the RTOs and RPOs set together, and align both the plan of how you can co-own this. There's got to be a better planning. I already spoke about it, but sit down and put these budgets together, at least some portion of the budgets. And today, I would say in the majority of cases, there's two totally separate budgets, and I'm sure everyone you speak to would agree with us. Start putting at least some collaboration and joint budgeting together in terms of this, and then really sitting down and looking at the data as the systems and where are they. Data fragmentation is a massive challenge. So if you don't know where the data is, how can you deal with it? If you don't know what systems you're running, how can you put a plan together? So get all of this data, put it together, sit down as a team and say, right, what are we going to do to protect ourselves with the data that we have, that we know where it is, and what systems are we running? And then again, go through the drills, make sure that in the event of an attack, what are you going to do? Where's your data sitting? How can you recover? And proactively run an exercise of actually being hit, or trying, potentially, hopefully, not being able to be hit. So that's really where we say it's not just about acknowledging the fact that there should be better collaboration between teams, but obviously, what are we going to do to improve that? Yeah, and that's it.
Yeah. So Greg, in a nutshell, tell us, how would you advise a business on the best data backup practices to implement?
Yeah, that's a lovely question, and one that I speak about all day, and we're very passionate about at Cohesity. So first thing is consolidate vendors. Once you've merged security operations and IT operations, and they're starting to collaborate, they will both find out how many tools they have and how many vendors that they're working with. So first thing is, let's start consolidating the amount of vendors in this space. Next thing would be to start reducing the silos of data, because there'll be all these different silos of data. So start addressing this mass data fragmentation, as we call it. Next thing is to put a plan together to recognize and remediate proactively where these threats are coming from, and then use a tool like Cohesity Helios, which is AI powered, which will use AI and machine learning to proactively detect any anomalies and make sure that you catch these bad actors, as we call them, before anything happens. And then really take a sort of a next generation data management approach. And I'm not just using the term loosely. I'm saying, first of all, is my data immutable? Not only is my data immutable, is it encrypted? So this is what I call the ticket to the game. If you don't have immutable data and it's not encrypted, then you shouldn't even be looking at these as vendors as part of your vendor consolidation. Next thing is, how do you access the data? So, what tools have your vendors got in place? So do you support things like multi-factor authentication and quorum? How many copies of the password are there? If there's, one person with access to the data, I would be concerned. You need multi-factor authentication, more than one person having access to this data. And then not only how do we access the data, but we have existing tools in place. So when you bring the security operations and the IT operations teams together, there are going to be multiple tools and specialist security tools. So is my backup vendor able to integrate with these third-party vendors? Do they have APIs that support this integration layer into this? And then, ultimately make sure that there's a zero trust architecture, absolutely zero trust architecture. And do you support this sort of what we call anti-ransomware capabilities? So all in a nutshell, Cohesity's threat defense architecture will bring all of this to you. And then the ability to obviously locate and recover cleanly in the event of a disaster. So, when you do, and if you do get hit, how quickly can you recover? And this should be, more a case of minutes than hours and days and even weeks in a lot of instances that I've heard about recently. So, what are we trying to do as Cohesity is really reduce your downtime, the amount of loss in terms of data and revenue, and improve in business continuity.
That's great. And it was a wonderful conversation, wonderful, such an interesting session. I really liked the information we got in the session. So thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you, Rabab. Lovely. Thank you. Appreciate it. Have a lovely weekend.
Yeah, thank you so much for watching, everyone. Stay tuned to TECHx to know more about what is happening inside the technology industry. Goodbye.